On today's show, how does Darius Garland's injury complicate the way we should look at last season? Plus, what does it cloud about this offseason? We're going to dive into those things. Plus, the Cavs aren't actually as far away as it might feel. That's all straight ahead on today's edition of Locked On Cavs.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, everybody? My name is Danny Cunningham. You might know me from my time covering the Cleveland Cavaliers, places like my Substack, The Inside Shot, Cleveland Magazine, 92.3 The Fan, and a number of other stops along the way. I want to say thank you to you for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. You can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. We're on YouTube as well. Make sure you give us a thumbs up, click that subscribe button, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest from us. Of course, the show is a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. We got news, of course, the other day that Darius Garland had to have surgery on the toe injury that kept him out of 4 games this postseason and certainly severely hampered him in another 3 games that he played against the Indiana Pacers. And at this point, it's been over 24 hours since the surgery was announced, came out on Monday. I'm recording this Tuesday evening. And so as you listen to this on Wednesday, we have all had a little bit of time to digest the news. And it has been a topic that has not been without a lot of conversation on the internet. Certainly, I talked about it on my Tuesday edition of Locked On Cavs that came out actually on Monday. But the more and more I think about this, the more and more I think that this injury shouldn't be looked at as an excuse to run things back. I think that this injury should be looked at as a reason as to why Darius Garland should return and as to why the Cavs, while I still don't think they should run things back, I think that their 3 best players should get another chance together. That is the thing that I cannot stop coming back to when I think of Garland's foot injury, because as I think back to those playoff games, the 2 games he played in Indy and game 5 in Cleveland, none of which he looked very good. And I think that some of his comments after those games about nobody knowing what he was going through feel a little bit clearer. And of course, we don't know the exact severity, but I do think it's fair to say that an injury that needs 5 to 6 months to heal, because as the team said, it's a 4 to 5 month recovery after surgery. And it's been about a month that Darius has been recovering since the end of the playoffs. So I put that as, okay, it's actually a 5 to 6 month recovery timeline. To me, that's not a minor injury. So as I look at this, and it's not a fun thing to say, the Cavs lost because of injuries. That's not a fun thing to say, and it doesn't tell the whole story. But I do think that I come out and I look at this and I say, you know what? I would just like to know what the Cavs would look like fully healthy in the playoffs. I would like to know what that looks like, because we don't have that answer. We do not have the answer, and you can go back and you can point to that series against the New York Knicks from 2023 and say, yeah, they were pretty healthy then. Sure, but I think that version of Darius Garland is much different than the Darius Garland that the Cavs had this year. I know that version of Evan Mobley, wildly different than who Evan Mobley was, I think, on both sides of the court this year. So I don't think, and then when you go back to last year, and yes, the Cavs were never going to be Boston, but with Donovan Mitchell missing time and Darius Garland being down 20 pounds, I don't think that group of players, that core, those 3 players, I don't think that is something that we realize enough, is that they've not had a healthy postseason run together. And I think that matters as you continue to evaluate this team, because I do think that there's a world in which Darius Garland gets traded this summer. I don't think that's the world we're living in. I do not think Darius Garland is going to get traded this summer. I would expect him to be on the Cavs at the start of next season. Now, you can never say never in this league. These things happen all the time. It's not a sure thing that he's back, but I would bet that he is. And I think that is something that makes more sense knowing what we know now. Because if this was a minor injury and it wasn't something that Darius could play through, but there was reason to believe that he's not, and there's been a lot of talk about this, that he's not a playoff riser because he hasn't had great playoff moments yet, doesn't mean those aren't to come in the future. And who's to say they couldn't have been on their way this year had he been healthy? Because you can look at, and again, I'm not going to overrate 2 good games against the Miami Heat in the first round because it's the first round. Those games don't matter as much. There's not as much pressure. And if we're being completely honest with ourselves, the Miami Heat were really not a playoff caliber opponent. So while I don't want to say that Darius is somebody that isn't good in the playoffs, like I need to see more of it. But I also think that we should be in a position now, partially because of this, to be willing to see, hey, Darius can still, there's reason to believe Darius Garland can still be a playoff performer. I don't think that we should look at this series as something that says this can't work in Cleveland. I think if anything, knowing what we know now that we learned on Monday should tell us that maybe you shouldn't blow this up. Maybe this is something that should stick together. Maybe this is something that can still be very successful in the postseason. I have been somebody, and if you have listened to this podcast for the year plus that I've been doing it now, wow, time flies. But if you have been listening to this podcast for the year plus that I've been doing it now, you know where I come out on Darius Garland. You know how I feel about him as a basketball player. You know that I am somebody who thinks Darius Garland is a star caliber player, and I don't think you should give up on that because he got injured in the playoffs. I don't think you should give up on that because this postseason didn't go the way that you expected it to go if you're the Cavs. And one of the other things that I keep coming back to, and I would love to know, and I don't think that he did just because of the time between now and then, when Kobe Alman gave his end of season availability or, press conference, I guess we'll call it, after the Cavs lost to the Pacers, he gave a quote where he said, "We're not giving up on a 23-year-old Evan Mobley. We're not giving up on a 28-year-old Donovan Mitchell. We're not giving up on a 25-year-old Darius Garland." Now, at that point, I think it's fair to say that Kobe Alman probably knew more about the severity of Darius Garland's foot injury than the rest of us did. I also think it's fair to say, considering that was nearly a month ago, I believe that was over 3 weeks ago at this point, I also think it's fair to say that he didn't know Darius Garland was going to need surgery. So he knew more about the severity than we did, being a team employee. I would imagine that he has, that information at hand, and he's saying these things, knowing these things. But even then, I wonder if he knew it was as bad as it turned out to be, to where we are a month out and he needed surgery. So I would imagine, and I have read a lot into that statement because I have not thought that Darius Garland is on its way out. But I would imagine that this most recent event, Garland having surgery, is something that probably just furthers that belief in Darius Garland. Because the reasons to doubt Garland are what? Are that he hasn't done it in the playoffs. And sure, you can say he hasn't stayed healthy. And I would agree. He needs to be somebody who's healthier in the postseason when it matters. You can say the same thing about Donovan Mitchell, having dealt with some significant lower body injuries in each of the last 2 postseasons. You could say the same thing about Evan Mobley, who had a sprained ankle this year. You could say that. But I look at this and is it Darius's fault he got hurt, or is this stuff the result of bad luck? I tend to think it's bad luck. I don't think that Darius did anything wrong that caused this. I know he didn't do anything wrong last year that caused him to lose 20 pounds after he broke his jaw. I just think that this has become a situation to where I have always been in the camp of not that the Cavs should run it back, because I still and probably feel stronger about this every day. I still believe that the Cavs do need to make some changes to this roster. I do not think that they should be a team that looks the same to start next year as they did to end this year. I think there should be changes, and I think some of them should be characterized as significant. I just think after all of this, after thinking about it, after learning everything that we've learned over the last week or so about this Darius Garland situation, about everything with the Cavs, I just don't think those significant moves should involve Darius Garland. I don't. We know they're not going to involve Donovan Mitchell. We know they're not going to involve Evan Mobley. They could involve Darius Garland. I don't think they should. I don't think that the Cavs would be doing the best thing for their franchise if they moved on from Darius Garland at this point. That doesn't mean he has to be in Cleveland forever. That doesn't mean he is going to win a championship in Cleveland. I have no idea both of those things. But I do think that knowing what we know now, this pushes me more towards the Cavs should probably give Darius Garland another year in Cleveland. And if it doesn't work then, it doesn't work then, and you figure it out. But I think it would be very short-sighted to abandon this group because Darius Garland got injured. Because ultimately, I don't think the Cavs are quite as far away as it maybe feels like right now. And a big reason as to why I feel that way is I think this Garland injury, the more we talk about it, the more we look at it, the more we learn how severe it was. I think we should probably start factoring that in just a little bit more to what happened in the playoffs against the Pacers. We'll talk about that a little bit next, right here on Locked On Cavs. Today's show brought to you by Wayfair. There is nothing like stepping into your own outdoor space and feeling like you've escaped to a personal oasis. If you are wanting to update your patio this season, Wayfair has made it so easy to turn it into a space that feels like yours. Comfortable, stylish, ready for summer. Wayfair has everything you need to level up your outdoor space. Conversation sets, outdoor bars, fire pits, hot tubs, gazebos. Love a good gazebo. And of course, even the perfect string lights. Ooh, I love those too, to set the vibe. I love being outside in the summer. You might be able to tell. I don't know how it comes through on YouTube. If you're listening to the podcast, you can't tell. I'm outside all the time. Like, I get a solid tan, I like to think. I am golfing all the time. Maybe I golfed on Tuesday. Being outside is great. And being able to set your outdoor space the way you want with Wayfair is only going to make your summer better. Summer it feels like it's finally here. In Cleveland, at least. You might be listening to somewhere else. Like, it's been summer for a while. Feels like summer is finally in Cleveland. You should be enjoying it with Wayfair. So don't wait. Make your outdoor space your dream oasis today with Wayfair and enjoy it all summer long. Head to wayfair.com right now to shop a huge outdoor selection. That is WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. Thank you again for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. Like I said earlier, you can find the show anywhere you get your podcast, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Make sure you drop us a 5-star rating. Leave us a nice review. Be a friend. Tell a friend about Locked On Cavs. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure a friend is subscribed as well. And I have talked about injuries not being the only excuse, not being the thing that the Cavs should fall back on when they think about this series against the Indiana Pacers. And it's not the only thing. And this was a team that I think 64 wins probably covered up some flaws more than they should have. That is what it is. But the more I think about this, the more I think the injuries mattered. And Garland's surgery puts this back into the forefront for me. What do the Cavs look like if they have a healthy Darius Garland in the playoffs? We don't know. There's no way to realistically answer that question. I can talk in hypotheticals and I can say, well, they would actually be the team that would be tied one game apiece in the NBA Finals. They would actually be the team that is hosting game 3 of the NBA Finals tonight. I don't know that. You don't know that. I might think that, but I don't know that. But what I do know is that the Cavs were not at their best. And I think for Cavs fans, what should be the most frustrating part about this shouldn't even be that they lost to the Pacers. I think the thing that should be most frustrating is that for the entire season, the Cavs were mostly healthy. Now, of course, there were instances Max Strus missed the first 6 weeks, and Evan Mobley missed a bit of time with an ankle sprain, and they had guys in and out of the lineup. But for the most part, the Cavs did a very, very strong job managing health this year. They stayed healthy. They didn't have guys miss a lot of games. Jared Allen played in all 82 games. Evan Mobley played 70 plus. Darius Garland played 70 plus. Donovan Mitchell, he played 70 plus. Those guys all played a lot of basketball games, and that's a big part of the reason why the Cavs won 64 games. Newsflash, the more your good players play, the more you're going to win. So I think what has become most frustrating is that judgment of this team has been shaded by a postseason roster that looks nothing like the regular season roster. And I was on the Locked On NBA Squad show that we taped the other day, and it should be in your feed if you want to go listen to it. It was myself, Matt Moore from Locked On NBA Today and Locked On Nuggets, Jake Madison from Locked On Pelicans, Kuka Hill from Locked On Pistons, and Nick Angstad from Locked On Mavericks. And one of the things that kind of stuck with me that Matt Moore said was that he kind of hopes Cavs fans just forget about the playoffs that they happened because this regular season was so great. And they won 64 games, and they were legitimately awesome from the day the season started, which I believe was October 23rd, truthfully, until the series against the Pacers started, because the series against Miami, they were great too. But I do think the thing that leads me to, one, look at the series against the Pacers differently, and two, be in favor, if I had to err on either blowing it up or running it back, I would err on run it back. Again, I don't think that's a perfect option. But the thing that pushes me there is in this series against Indiana, the Cavs were unrecognizable. Is part of that because of the style of basketball Indiana played? Sure, that's fair. They earned that 100%. They're in the finals right now, and the Cavs aren't. But I think a bigger part of that is because their three best players were all playing on one leg. Darius Garland couldn't move. Donovan Mitchell had a calf strain and an ankle injury. Evan Mobley was in a walking boot 2 days before game 2. I think those things need to matter. And I think as you look back at this, one, it tells you the Cavs are maybe not as far away as you think, which we will talk about coming up in a little bit. But I also think that it should lead you to say, you know what? If the Cavs looked like the Cavs, if they had the same team that was in the regular season, what does that series against the Pacers look like? What is that series? If they were the same 64-win team in the postseason that they were in the regular season, what are these conversations? So I do think that getting back to the Garland angle, it would be short-sighted to throw all of this away, especially when you're talking about a 25-year-old two-time All-Star, because he got hurt, because he had 3 bad games when he was playing significantly injured, so injured that he needed surgery 4 weeks later. I just think that when you think about that, it should lead you to want to see what this group looks like in the postseason. And maybe we never will. Maybe the Cavs will make significant changes this summer. I don't know that they will. I don't know that they won't. Again, as I've mentioned, I do not think Darius Garland will be traded. Maybe that'll happen, though. And we will never know what this group could have been in the postseason. Or you could take, if you're the Cavs, what essentially is a known commodity, because this is a very good basketball team. You cannot say otherwise. Even if they lost in 5 games in the second round, you cannot say that this basketball team is not very good. They got partially unlucky and they got beat by a very good team. But they got unlucky too, and that matters in this conversation. But I do kind of think there's there's certainly, it's tough to go through things not knowing what you don't know. And if the Cavs were to make a move, you're not going to know what the Cavs are going to be. Maybe they'll be better. Maybe they'll be worse. And you know what the Cavs are right now. The Cavs are very good. The Cavs are, I think, a great basketball team that was dealt a tough hand in the playoffs. They need to get better. I think that there are some things that need to be changed. But I also think that overreacting to Darius Garland playing through an injured foot during a playoff series, trading him away and making a significant change of that stature probably would not be the best thing for the Cavs. I think the best thing for the Cavs lies elsewhere. I do think changes need to be made, but I don't think the best thing for the Cavs is trading away a two-time All-Star that's only 25 years old. As I've mentioned a couple times, I don't think the Cavs are as far away from being in the NBA Finals or even winning a title as you might think. I'll tell you why next, right here on Locked On Cavs. Today's show brought to you by Game Time. There's nothing like the NBA playoffs, the intensity, buzzer beaters, fans losing their minds. It's kind of atmosphere that you must experience live. This year's matchups, they've delivered. Maybe not the way that we in Cleveland imagined they might, but they've delivered. And Game Time makes it easy and quick to get seats. Maybe you want to go to a game. Well, you could drive 4.5 hours to Indianapolis because they're still playing there. You can get tickets on Game Time. You can get the best deals on Game Time. It's not a far drive. I made it. Went there twice this year. Indy's a great city too. But Game Time has the ability to know exactly what your seat's going to look like, what your view is going to look like. They've got killer last-minute deals, and this is important, no surprise fees. Game Time is a total game changer. Plus, the NFL schedule is out. We know when games are going to be on the lakefront. We know when they're not going to be on the lakefront. We know when the good teams are going to be in town. We know when the bad teams are going to be in town. A bad team will always be in town because a bad team, of course, is in Cleveland. If you want to go to those games, Game Time is the place to go. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA. That is LOCKEDON NBA for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Thank you again for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. Like I said, if you're watching on YouTube, do me a favor. Hit that thumbs up button for me. Click subscribe. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs from me. I don't think the Cavs are as far away as it maybe feels like. The Indiana Pacers and the Oklahoma City Thunder, of course, are tied 1-1 in the NBA Finals. And I do think that you could talk yourselves into the Cavs should be in the finals this year. That's fine. I don't necessarily want to do that conversation. I feel like I kind of had a version of that in the first couple of segments. But look at what has happened for both of those teams before. The Pacers last year lost in the conference finals. They were swept in the conference finals. And I think if you would have told them in January, hey, you guys are going to be playing in June, they probably would have believed you because, organizations are always going to believe in themselves. But if you would have told Tony East over at Locked On Pacers in June that, hey, you're going to be, I don't know if he drove or flew, but whatever. You're going to be traveling back and forth between OKC and Indy in June for the finals, he would not have believed you. And I also look at this from the Thunder perspective. Last year, Oklahoma City, they were right where the Cavs were. They lost in the second round. And it was different for them too because they underperformed. They were healthy and they underperformed. Of course, they lost to a Dallas Mavericks team that went to the finals. They had a series where they could not shoot the basketball, and the Dallas Mavericks could not miss shots in that series. The Mavericks went to the finals. They lost in the finals. Does that sound familiar? because I kind of think that's where we're at too. I think that the Cavs are in a situation where they underperformed. And of course, we talked about the injuries. I don't want to continue to harp on that, but that is part of it. We've talked about the injuries, but they also underperformed. They couldn't shoot the basketball, and it felt like the Pacers never missed shots in that series, right? And a year later, Oklahoma City is on the doorstep potentially of winning a title. And a year later, after being in the conference finals and being swept, the Indiana Pacers are potentially on the doorstep of winning the finals. I think Oklahoma City is something that could have been predicted, but last year, I don't think the Thunder felt great about losing in the second round. I think they were happy overall with the season they had, the regular season they had, where they won 50-plus games for the top seed, and they lost in the second round. And this year, they might win the finals. Did they make significant changes? No, I mean, they added some guys, of course, Isaiah Hartenstein, Alex Caruso. Like, those are certainly nice additions that have made them a much better basketball team. But they didn't panic because they weren't that far away. And I don't think that the Cavs are very far away either. I'm not saying they're going to be in the finals next year, but as I have mentioned a number of times on this podcast, I would suspect that they will be the favorites in the Eastern Conference when those odds come out over the next 10 to 15 days. I would suspect that this team is going to be very, very good. And I just think that this Garland news should serve as a reminder that the Cavs are not as far away as it felt. And I also think it's probably a good reminder to sometimes you need to take a deep breath and just remember it doesn't always go your way. And this year, unfortunately for the Cavs, just looked like one of those years. But thank you for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. You can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Make sure you drop us a 5-star rating. Leave us a nice review. Be a friend. Tell a friend about Locked On Cavs. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure a friend is subscribed as well. Quick heads up. So on Wednesday, I'm appearing on a different Locked On podcast. I am on Locked On Irish. Some of you might know I'm a big Notre Dame football fan. So if you want my college football takes and a little bit of NBA talk, go check out Locked On Irish today because I am on that episode with Tyler. I was very excited to do it. It was certainly a blast, and love getting to just chat with another Locked On show. But go check that out if you're interested. If not, I will be back tomorrow right here with Matt Fontana, old friend of mine, talking about the Cleveland Cavaliers.